Hey everybody, welcome to the Oaks Countdown with Nicole, Russo, and Dan Illman. And as we are recording this video, that countdown is down to about 100 hours, if my math is correct, which is always touch and go. The field is set for the 150th running of the Kentucky Oaks, a purse of 1.5 million, 3-year-old fillies going a mile and an eighth. Let's take a look at that field, Dan, and we're going to show you this field on 2 pages. It is an overflow group. Again, as we're shooting this, Our Pretty Woman and Candide have until 9 a.m. scratch time on Friday to draw in if there's a withdrawal in the race. But just top to bottom, a deep, well-matched group.
It's a super field, and the fact that 2 quality fillies like Our Pretty Woman, who is second in the Fairgrounds Oaks, right behind the logical favorite in this race, Tarifa, and Candide, who is third in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies. The fact that they're on the outside looking in as also eligibles, it just shows how strong and competitive this field is.
Yeah, Our Pretty Woman and Candide really coming out of 2 of the final key points prep races. But as you said, the morning line favorite is Tarifa, who bested Our Pretty Woman in the Fairgrounds Oaks. Tarifa drew post 8 at the draw the other night. Trainer Brad Cox said he loved that post for her. And, really, let's take another look at Tarifa, because she's really she has done nothing wrong. She has progressed throughout the spring. She's coming off back-to-back graded stakes wins, including in the Fairgrounds Oaks, which is a key prep race. She's training well here at Churchill Downs. You see her stablemate Gin from Brad Cox's barn, who will also run in the Kentucky Oaks alongside her in some of these workout photos. I think if anything is Tarifa's weakness, it's that she's still developing a little bit mentally. We noted that she pulled hard into the first turn into the backstretch of the Fairgrounds Oaks. But Brad Cox feels that they've really worked to address that mentally and get her to settle.
Oh, she's ticked so many boxes on paper, and she deserves to be the favorite. I mean, she dominated the fillies at the Fairgrounds over the winter. She has wonderful tactical speed and the ability to place herself anywhere within the context of a race. Her buyer speed figures are exceptionally strong. She has top connections. I guess a potential weakness is the fact that the only blemish on her resume came the one and only time she ran at Churchill Downs. Maybe, just maybe, she didn't love the surface that day, but I think it's a little too early to pigeonhole her as a horse that doesn't like the surface. And maybe the second potential weakness is the possibility of a faster pace than what she was used to seeing at the Fairgrounds, where she was able to stay close to the pace. I wouldn't be surprised in the Oaks if she has to come from farther out of it, but she's been so pace adaptable thus far that I think she could overcome that.
Yeah, and there are a lot of fillies this week at Churchill Downs that I've been seeing who are training really on the engine, on the muscle. We'll talk about a couple of them in a minute. I think that lends credence to you thinking that it could be a faster early pace than she's had to adapt to thus far. I think those gates might open. A crowd of over 100,000 is going to scream. And some of these fillies who are still lightly raced and who've been training forwardly might go, whoa, better get out of here. They've got a nice long run into the first turn, but I think it could be kind of a scramble into that first turn.
I agree. Horses like Into Champagne, the number 10, Where's My Ring, the number 3, even Regulatory Risk, the number 4, and certainly a horse like Fiona's Magic, the 7. These could provide a very fast pace to set things up for some closers in here or stalkers. And if Tarifa is comfortable and able to settle, as Brad feels that she's learning to do, maybe that will actually work to her benefit.
Another filly who I think might appreciate something in front of her to target a little bit might be Leslie's Rose. She's the second choice on the morning line. She pounced with a really nice move into the stretch to win the Ashland at Keeneland, which we talked about as being, really a strong field, a key prep. You're going to see Leslie's Rose, and you're going to see Just FYI, who was the champion 2-year-old filly last year, coming down the stretch. Both of them giving a very good account of themselves. It's really interesting to me, though, that in listening to people talk about this race, Tarifa's the morning line favorite, Leslie's Rose a deserving second choice off a grade 1 win. But really kind of the steam and conversation has gone to some other fillies, Just FYI and even Ways and Means, both of whom will be making their second start of the year in the Oaks and eligible to kind of step forward.
Well, it's funny that just FYI, the unbeaten 2-year-old filly champion of 2023 has actually never gone off favored in any of her 4 lifetime starts. And you would think that the Ashland, a belated start to her campaign, was just the perfect prep. I don't think Bill Mott went to the bottom of the well. It seems like she's blossomed since that race. She deserves to take money in this race, ways and means, off of a very difficult trip in her seasonal debut, the Gulfstream Park Oaks. Trip handicappers, fans of horses with big buyer speed figures, they're going to go with ways and means. Leslie's Rose's last race, the Ashland, where she defeated Just FYI, was a very important start in her development because she disappointed so badly in the Devona Dale, her prior start, that she needed to prove that she belonged in this field. And she worked out a beautiful trip, saving ground in the inner pocket, angling 3 wide, and then getting the better of Just FYI through the short stretch at Keeneland. This is a very difficult outside post position, however, for Leslie's Rose. But supposedly, according to our colleague Mike Welsh, she is training superbly leading up to this race. And maybe there's just enough of a long run into the first turn where Irad Ortiz can save a little bit of ground because she's going to have to.
You know what? And it's interesting that you bring up the outside post because looking at both sides of the coin, I don't see being outside as necessarily a deal breaker for either Just FYI or Leslie's Rose outside of her. Just FYI, of course, won from an outside post in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies, and she's actually got a longer run to work with into the first turn than she did that day. And Leslie's Rose, they talked about the Ashland being a big step forward for her because they thought she got intimidated when she was down inside in between horses in the Devona Dale. And then in the Ashland, she was able to learn from that, move forward, split foes. But there's going to be a lot going on Friday. And I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing for her to maybe be outside and work out an overland trip and not be put in that position while there's so many other things to worry about in this race.
Certainly so much kickback with so many horses in this race. She'll likely avoid that if she stays on the outside. And of course, the traffic issues as well. She just doesn't want to be too wide going into the first turn because you don't want to give ground in a race where all these fillies are so competitive. But again, she has all the natural ability of the world, a 7-figure yearling purchase. That we expected a lot from Leslie's Rose since day one. And she seems to be coming into this race in perfect form for Todd Pletcher.
Well, we're talking about fillies who are making their second start of the year in the Oaks. And one I think we haven't got into in the weeks leading up to the race is another one of those. Thorpedoanna made her 3-year-old debut in the Fantasy at Oaklawn and won. We'll watch her win here. Now, I'm kind of not quite sure about the quality of the field that she beat here, but you can't deny the way she did it. She's coming to Churchill Downs, which is, you could consider her home track. And she is another one just training like a monster this week. And trainer Kenny McPeak, who is still looking for that elusive Oaks after running second a number of times, says, well, they all better bring a bear to the Oaks because mine's a grizzly.
I think that this filly could be the value play in the Kentucky Oaks if folks gravitate towards a champion like Just FYI, a sharp runner like Tarifa, a big figure runner like Leslie's Rose, a trip horse like Ways and Means, because you saw it. Thorpedoanna's Fantasy, it was like breaking sticks. It was her first start off of the layoff. She has that excellent tactical speed that Tarifa also boasts. She got her figure, her 91 buyer, by far the fastest of her career. And just the way she won that race, she was exuding confidence the last eighth of a mile. I think Thorpedoanna, as Kenny McPeak says, is the real deal. She's a horse that would certainly be among my top 4 selections in the race. And I'm expecting a very, very good performance at a fair price.
Well, final thoughts for the final countdown, Dan. Is there anything else that you think people should be considering in these final days leading up to the Oaks? Or, is there somebody that you're leaning toward in these final days?
Well, it's funny. I mean, the field is so deep. Power Squeeze is a horse that hasn't even gotten a lot of attention this week. And all she's done is win her last 4 races, including beating Ways and Means last time out, albeit with a much better trip. I, of course, want to look for value come post time and see which one of sort of the big 4 in here or 5 offer the best value. I'm kind of a believer in Leslie's Rose, though, Nicole. I thought her last race was a coming out party. And if this outside post may sort of make people shy away from her from the betting standpoint, and as you said, it could actually be somewhat of a plus.
Yeah, I absolutely think that even the morning line favorites in this race Leslie's Rose and Tarifa, the morning line choice we
Sure.
talked about, I think they could both offer value because I do think with the steam on some other horses, just FYI and Ways and Means, I think those two could drift up. I do think Leslie's Rose will offer great value. And I think if you like her, then you have to like just FYI, who I'm, leaning at a little bit in the minute. I think she got exactly what she needed to out of the Ashland. I think she's training fantastically. And they keep changing the forecast a little bit again, a few days out, whether or not we might have a wet track on Friday. I think if there is a wet track, she's one of those who will benefit from it, will not dislike it.
No, she certainly proved that when she won the Frizette over a very, very sloppy track. Leslie's Rose is one over a racetrack with some moisture in it. Leslie's Rose to me is very, very interesting. I think Power Squeeze and Torpedo Anna would be sort of my price plays. Tarifa is just very, very logical.
All right. Well, as we said, we are ticking ever closer and closer to Friday's Kentucky Oaks. Thank you for sticking with us all season. Stick with us and see how it turns out this weekend. It's a deep, competitive field. Several fillies in here would not surprise either one of us. Thank you for tuning in to DRFTV in this lead up to a fantastic edition of the Kentucky Oaks.